Hello and welcome to the Divorce Couch. My name is Salma and I'm a divorce coach based in London, UK.
And hi, I'm Claire, and I'm a divorce coach based in Coleraine in Northern Ireland.
Hi, my name is Simone, and I'm the divorce coach based in Germany.
And for today's episode, we thought we'd focus on something that I'm sure we're all familiar with, even during the course of normal life as such. But it just becomes that bit more sort of exaggerated when we're going through divorce proceedings and the run up to divorce and the aftermath of divorce. And it's very often, clients will come to us and feel like there's just so much going on. And, they're just, you're having to spread yourself so thin. And there's this feeling of just being pulled in 100 different directions. And it's at that point in time that we need to sort of bring in a little bit of balance back into our lives so that we can focus our energies on what is required at that moment in time. So we were having a chat about this exact dilemma. And, one of the tools that came to mind was a brilliant tool called the Circle of Control, which was first written up by a gentleman called Stephen Covey in his book, the 7 Habits of Successful People. I hope I got that right.
Yeah.
But I'm sure if you Google it, you'll find the exact book. And in fact, it's probably one of the first self-development books I bought many years ago, long before I was at all interested in self-development and how that book could help me. And now it's obviously something that I refer back to, quite regularly. So we thought we'd have a discussion about how we can use this concept of the circle of control in order to bring some balance back into our lives and for those that are struggling with the overwhelm of divorce. So I'll start off by asking you wonderful ladies, like, what is it about the circle of control that we find is appropriate, I suppose, in this situation?
Oh, I think everything.
Yeah.
Everything about it is appropriate, isn't it? Because, listening to what you said, this starts long before. So when you have a divorce journey, you are the person who decides to do the leaving. So this has been in your head for quite a while, and you have had the thought processes beforehand. What about the finances? Where are we going to live? What about the children? So you've already started that, gosh, there's this and there's this and there's this and there's this, and what about my job? And all of these things. Or if you are the person who has found that somebody has just said that they're leaving, you then have all of these things brought into your world, but you're almost like catching up on the back foot. So I think depending on which part of a divorce journey that you're on and where you're coming from will depend on where it starts. But I don't think there's any divorce journey that doesn't have this specifically, because it's so multi-layered and it impacts every part of our lives.
Mm-hmm. I think I don't know many life situations where something is inevitably changing. It is so intertwined, and as the title of the control circle suggests, it has a lot to do what is within our control and what is outside our control. So unless, I think, you have this very, we see it in Hollywood, and Reese Witherspoon has just recently announced that she is divorcing from her husband, and they have this nice draft that, I don't know whether it's them, but very often we hear it from Hollywood that, that they kind of do it amicably. And then whatever is to be split, if you're amicable and you see eye to eye, it is more likely that you come to agreements because it's all one big negotiation. You know what? You have had a unit and the unit needs to be split. And most likely, because you're splitting, the split of your unit is not going to be nice, or else you would have been still married. And then things start to get really difficult and tense when we throw in that you're not even on the same journey at the same time. So you're working with resentment and you're working with anger. And on the same time, above it all, you have the split of one life into 2 lives. ta-da, and then things can go very quickly, very wrong. And the tool that you have just mentioned is helping in terms of categorizing your triggers into parts that you can look at and think, you know what, can I let go of this? Then obviously you need some help. How do you do that? Or can I influence something? Or is it something to do with me? For example, I'm just going ahead. It could be anything to be, if you go to court, you have no more influence. It is at the mercy of a judge. So that's everything but control. It is a third party. And I think the bigger and the more complex the divorce unfolds, the more difficult it will be, because you have so many more people in that system with their own agenda that we cannot control. So that was my little quick take on it.
So I think we can start with a visual depiction of the control circle. So if you bear with me, hopefully I'll be able to share the screen without any massive technical hitches. So this is really, this is taken from Stephen Covey's book, and it really shows us visually when we're talking about the control circle. So it's very much about, obviously life is fraught with worries, and divorce even more so. Like Simone said, there's the financials, and then there's children, and then there's the paperwork, and then there's trying to, in some shape or form, continue with life as it continues. You may still have to get up and go to work. You may still have to, look after your parents and your children, and keep your house tidy. So all of these things, they all sort of culminate into one big snowball.
Yeah.
And that's where the overwhelm comes from. So and then sometimes, in an attempt to sort of keep a hold of some sort of sanity, we want to try and be able to control the outcomes. But in reality, I think it's important to understand that, that may not necessarily be possible. Life has changed, and we need to be able to see and adapt to those changes in a way that is going to allow us to divert the energy that we have to where it is most required. And I think that's where the control circle can help us sort of weed through in IT, we have something, when we're designing a product, what is the must-haves and what is the could-haves and what is the absolutely needs to have. And I think the control circle very much focuses on the same theory, that what do you actually have control over at this point in time? And so if we look at the picture in front of us, and there's three circles, and I think the first circle very much, circle number 3, I'll call that the first circle because it's on the outer circle.
Are you on the outside? Oh yeah, the outside. Yeah,
I'm on the outside. So circle number 3 is what is commonly known as the circle of, let me just get this right, circle of concern. So things that worry us, things that we may be concerned about, but actually we have very minimal control over. Things like the weather, things like government policy. Yes, of course we're concerned about it. Yes, of course it impacts our life in some shape or form. But in reality, we have very little control over what the weather's going to be tomorrow, or what the budget is going to sort of be this year. So for us to spend excessive amounts of time worrying about these things is actually taking our attention away from the things that we could be focusing on in order to sort of move forward with the challenges that we have. What do you think, ladies?
I think I'm a huge fan of organizing and clustering. So when you just mentioned before you introduced this visual, I was also thinking of the Eisenhower principle, right? How you also, when we work with our clients, when we are able to look at what is urgent and important, what is urgent, what is important, what is neither urgent nor important. And I think, you know what, if you could combine that and then look at just, you know what, let's think about our divorce clients, you know what, there are so many areas that keeps them awake, that, you know what, that really fires the ruminating thought. So it would be probably beautiful to just look at your different thoughts and or places that trigger you to be really tense and really stressful, and potentially have one or two of those, and then just look, you know what, maybe you just look at those headers, those like those how do you call it, those headlines, topics,
titles, topics,
if it could be potentially part of that. And then because as you were describing, that's something we have hardly or no control over. And then maybe to just visually see that, if you know what, cut out your own circles to say, oh, okay, there's actually nothing I can do. For example, your children go over to your ex-partner. You have no control over, as much as you want to, what they eat, how much TV they watch. And you know what, I've been there. I know how irritated I was when they came back and they watched a movie that was for an age that I probably thought, you know what, I don't know, would I have done that? Probably no. But the moment I learned, you know what, to let go of that and to not ruminate and fixate on that, and allow myself to hand over energy to a situation that was totally out of my control. So that is what my first suggestion was, to just, you know what, look at your situation. Can you have any of these headers and related to your
I think, I mean, an interesting one that like jumps out at me is your past decisions, choices, and behaviors. I think that it's quite interesting that is within the circle of concern, because actually, you know, this is something that comes up for clients quite a lot, something that can be quite upsetting for them. You know, we can spend a huge amount of time worrying about decisions that we had made. I wish I had done that. You know, I could have behaved differently, or I wish I, you know, so and so had behaved differently. And I think that's where it's really important that actually, as painful as those thoughts are, the more we focus on them, the more we are sort of creating more of that pain. When in reality, if we were able to think about this rationally, what has happened, the decisions that we did make, we made them at that time, quite possibly with the best possible intention or the information that we had at hand. We can't go back and change them, and we can't change the outcomes of what happened at that point in time, which is why it's really important that, you know, what we can do is focus our intentions on what will happen in the future. So if that same event or decision came up again, we can then have control in the now as to how we might respond. And that's where it becomes more relevant, I suppose, in the terms of the circle of control.
Yeah, and that's you know, taking the learning out of a situation. You can't change the situation, but I think in every situation there is something to learn, something to take away, something that will help in the future. And if we can take something away and think, okay, so if I'm in a situation like this again, this is how I might think about it. Listening to what both of you are saying, one of the things that struck me is that when you're on a divorce journey, there's an awful lot of unknown. And when we have unknown, we have fear. And fear is a thing that can magnify without us even realizing it. So whilst we may not look at, goodness, where am I going to live and how is this going to pan out? Because it's far too scary. It's far too unknown. It's not what we want, maybe, if somebody has left us. It's almost like our brain goes, that is far too big. So I'm going to focus on something that I can manage, which would be, I'm looking at this here, and it's like, what's the weather going to be like? Or what about if I lose my job? So it's fear is the driving force behind the things that I'm seeing in circle number 3. But it's like it's the way that our brains are allowing us to cope with the fact that fear is now in our world because we've lost control. So this is the way it's allowing us to handle it. So we're outworking it onto a different thing.
Yeah.
So when I have clients in front of me and I hear this sort of thing, I'm very much into talking about energy and what do we do with our energy and protecting it, and helping clients to see that we give our energy away so often without having any knowledge of it. And a lot of the place that we give our energy away is in what we think about. And that's not what people think. So a lot of people would think that giving your energy away is because you're going to do 5 things in the next half an hour. And it's not actually that. It's if somebody, or say your ex-partner, sends you a message and you get really upset, and in your head for the next 3 hours, you go over, why did he say that? What's wrong with him? I don't like that. This isn't fair. That is actually giving your energy away. And it's that same thing.
Guilty.
I think we're all guilty,
Yeah.
we all are. And I mean, let's face it, we are all divorce coaches. A lot of it because we know the things that caught us stuck for so long that we want to help our clients move through in an easier, shorter, faster, less upsetting way, because we have tools to help them that we didn't have at the, we learned it as we went along. At least I know for me, I did. And so when we can look at things in a different way, we are able to make different choices because we're starting to notice. And I think the idea of looking to see where your energy is going. So if you feel really flat and really lethargic and a bit down, I would say to my clients, think about the previous 2 or 3 hours and see, did something happen? Did you get a text? Did you think about something? Were you with a friend? Were you talking about the whole event over and over again in a way that it's not actually helping you move forward?
Yes.
But all of this comes, like any change that we talk about, comes because we notice and have an awareness.
Yes.
And I think it is easier to have an awareness when we have some idea of what to be aware of, which is why I think this visual is particularly good for this session, because I don't think there's a person on the planet that couldn't put themselves into those circles fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And go, oh, I do a lot of this.
Yeah.
A lot of what other people think, or a lot of what my ex-partner has said, or a lot of, so you can find yourself and where you fit in a larger portion fairly fast and go, okay, that's that circle 2. So what might I need to be thinking about to get into circle 1 if circle 1 will keep me more focused and grounded and sort of pull it back in? And that's where we store our energy up, because we're not actually giving it away for free.
Yeah. And I think circle 2 becomes quite significant in a divorce journey. And that's called the circle of influence. So there might be, so as you know, you may not have control over it, but you may have a certain level of influence in that area. And I think I'm looking at it from the perspective of, one of the things that comes up time and time again is the impact of communications and interactions with the other partner after the divorce. And that, like you said, Claire, can suck a huge amount of energy out of us if these are constantly negative conversations that are going on, or negative interactions. And it can leave us in a really, very low, depressed, overwhelmed, depleted state. And that's, I think, where we want to be able to sort of recognize what is going on here. That, like Simone said earlier, that, once your children are with their dad, you can try and sort of enforce some level of control around, you want the children to sleep at a certain bedtime, you want them to have a certain type of dinner, or you want to have these sort of rules and regulations in place. In reality, once they have left your care or in the care of the other parent, then you have very little control over enforcing those rules. Of course, you can voice them, but whether they are actually, put into place, you have no control over. And
but
so
it isn't that. I mean, I'm just trying to basically kind of like declinated through. So let's use that example. There's probably a lot that both parents do differently, but then there is also something potentially you could influence, but the other parent might not know that there is an exam that's to be written on the other day. Bedtime, for example. I hear that very often, that bedtime is really difficult or differently held, right? One is more, I'm really much, about 12 hours at night when they were younger, and their father was different, and there is no right or wrong. But then maybe potentially if I would then decide to provide the other parent with the information why maybe tonight would be a good night, to put them to bed earlier, because on the next day there is maybe potentially some sport competition. I still cannot control what the decision is when the kids go to bed, but then I can basically communicate and influence the other person by providing
that information. Yes.
And the way you provide the information,
Absolutely.
And what you just said, how you communicate.
Yes,
and
you can choose that.
And it's when going back to your example, Claire, if you are ahead of the decision-making process that you want to leave, I can still, and I mean, if I know it's going to be painful, I can still decide and try to be gentle doing it. Inform myself, how do I do the leaving talk? And that is the influencing part that I could do, how much responsibility can I still take on in order to stay, let's say, empathetic. I think it has probably a lot to do with empathy and compassion, but for the other persons and their experience that they're going through. Not that I can, say, I don't know how they're reacting, but I can do as best as possible. Yeah, those words just popped into my mind. Empathy and compassion were probably a great way to communicate, to just say, is this an empathetic message, or
and I think
about anything.
That's really important, because I think the thing that just jumped out of me when you said that we can't control how the other person's going to react, and I think that's true for anybody that is in that outer circle. It doesn't necessarily have to be an ex-partner. It could be your manager at work. It could be your children. It could be anybody. And when we are trying to sort of stay on top of things, we sort of sometimes are overwhelmed by the fact that somebody hasn't behaved in a way that we were expecting. Like, we've come home tired from work and the children have decided to have an almighty meltdown because they can't find their PE kit. And actually that was never part of the plan. Yeah. Right? So I think this is where it's really important to work out, like, actually, we don't have control over how the other party is going to react, respond, behave. But we do have absolute control over how we are going to view that situation, how we're going to respond to that situation, how we're going to, de-escalate that situation, or even just ignore that situation in some cases. And I think that's where this control circle, allows us to sort of think about, right, okay, the response that I'm getting, or the challenge that's come up, or whatever it may be, isn't what I was expecting. It isn't what I can control, but what can I do in response? And I think it's a difference between reacting and responding.
Oh, I love that one. Yeah, I'm big on that. Unfortunately, we don't have translations for that. It's the same. So,
really?
Yeah, we don't.
Wow.
So, but then this is what I noted. That is a very theoretical approach. Let's go mirror neurons. Let's talk about, how aggression and anger outbursts. I mean, I don't see many women or moms or dads with their 2-year-old having a meltdown at the supermarket, keeping their cool. I mean, it's the 1 out of 100 who's really, going down on the knees, because you get aggravated, and for your own personal belief system. And sometimes what I heard yesterday, listening to a podcast with Bill Eddy, apparently he cited it has a lot to do with mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are very important for the humankind to survive, because we mirror somebody else's behavior as a baby in order to know what's going on. How should I behave? But of course, this is also negative, right? If somebody has an angry outburst or has the intention to do something which triggers me, and if it is emotionally done, it will rise in us, right? As much as we know there is calming behavior, it immediately means the natural consequence is that we are also very easily falling for the aggressive triggers. So what do you two think will help? You know, when you look at this and you're really trying to not be triggered, but how do you do that? How do you apply this theory in reality? What are your to-go-to methods?
I think sometimes it can become a vicious circle of overwhelm, self-neglect, and then not being able to respond. So I think that, if we are able to, obviously this is rather idealistic, because when we're in it, it's quite hard to see that. But I think, this is one thing that I'm always beating into my clients is, you can't pour from an empty cup. So in order for you to be able to respond to the challenges that are coming your way, and there's going to be a lot of them, while you're going through your divorce, and, for some time after the divorce as well, if you are not looking after yourself, then you're not going to be able to respond in a calm and rational way. It's just not how the humans work.
Yes,
right?
when we're tired,
yeah,
we can overreact really quickly. Yeah,
we're tired, we're hungry, we're I don't know, unhealthy, we're like angry, we're sort of emotional, we're sad, we're depressed, we're all of these things at the same time. How can we possibly expect ourselves to remain calm and rational at a time like that? So the key thing is start looking at how you can reduce those factors.
And how do you do that? I mean, I'm really trying to, because I really like what we're unpacking here.
How do you do that?
Yeah, and I wonder if we have like one or two things that we can give our viewers. You know what? I love your empty cup. I wonder, if even if I'm aggravated because we have some coming home late issue here, I wonder whether I could then immediately, I don't know, anchoring is something, right? I could anchor it somewhere in my body. And I love this idea of the empty cup. If I can just basically just say that in the future, if I get aggravated, late, and I just touch my earlobe, and I immediately know when I touch my earlobe, up comes the empty cup, and the empty cup that's not, the path you should go on in order to react here. So I love that empty cup visual.
There's another thing that happens in life. I mean, I've been unwell, as you know, for the last 4 weeks with chest infection and sinusitis. So my coping mechanisms have been lower than usual. And so what I know, first of all, is I'm aware of that. So when the kids decide to kick off, or they go to school and they've forgotten something, or, I ask them to do something and it's not done, or I get an email that I'm not expecting or something, I'm aware. The first thing is I'm aware that my coping mechanisms are down. So I have a little bit more compassion with myself to start with. When I look back on my divorce journey, there were certain things that I put in place after time that definitely helped. And it was, don't open a text or an email late at night from my ex-partner if something came in, because then I wouldn't probably sleep if I got upset. So I would turn my phone off earlier and not be triggered by something. Another thing that I talk to my clients about is how often, when something happens that upsets us that our ex-partner says or does, how many people do we phone and tell about it? And what's their response by way of, he did what, or she did what, that? So it just fuels the fire. So to be aware that actually maybe that it might feel good, but maybe it's not helping us. And that's where we as divorce coaches come in. And we would all say this to our clients, we provide a safe and non-judgmental space for you to say it as it is, to get it out there, and let's have a look at it and see, to allow the emotions to be felt and to move through in an easier way than getting stuck in the anger of ringing 7 people that you know, and that you know their response is going to be, I can't believe that was said. I can't believe that. Poor you. Because that just fuels the fire. And I mean, I would be guilty of not realizing that that kept me stuck. And that was a trigger. So I got triggered. And then I allowed other people to fan that because I just didn't quite know what to do or where to go with it. But as time went on and I realized that's maybe not such a good idea, then I started to think, what else could I do? So there are different practical things like that. And another one would be, when somebody is angry, if your partner is angry and they say something, step back for a minute and give it space. Decide not to respond to a text or an email, and decide, I'm not going to respond until the next day, or I'm not going to respond for 3 hours. Give yourself space to calm down a little bit, because sometimes what happens is you can say something or do something that you nearly wish you hadn't, but it's because the emotions have kind of got you in there. So if you can decide in advance to press a pause button. I love that whole idea of pressing an imaginary pause button. It just buys you time to become a little bit less emotive and a little bit more objective, to go, now, how am I going to choose to respond to this? And that changes
and does it warrant a response? Because every message or text or email that you get doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to warrant a response. Now, what is it? And this is, I think, something which is really, sometimes I know from my own experience, is that there was this need to hit back with a response, and then there would be another response, and then this sort of almost like this tennis.
The energy kept in it.
Yeah, but at what point could I just choose not to be part of that game?
Yeah, I talk to my clients about dropping the rope. I talk about it, a tug of war. And I say to them, we each end up holding one side of a rope, and energy stays in the argument when the 2 sides of the rope are being pulled one against the other. And I talk a lot to my clients about, can you drop the rope? Because when you drop the rope by not responding to the text or not responding to the email, what it does is takes the energy out of it and allows it to settle down. And an awful lot of my clients come back and go, oh, I dropped the rope today. Because it's an image that they can easily visualize and quickly see and go, oh, and maybe I need to do that. And that my clients have found that helpful.
Yeah, and that's brilliant, because it's something that they can, a bit like Simone's empty cup, it's something that they can quickly bring to their they can access at a time where sometimes, rationality has gone out the window. And we all have probably felt that moment of sort of almost like powerlessness that you feel, that you must react, and I think that's a really good, I'm going to use that with my clients. Thank you for that.
And it's exactly what I just, especially, when you, let's assume you're separating and you're still under the same roof, because you're not immediately moving out, or your partner is moving out. And and this is basically kind of like a shaped diamond. Imagine that you for yourself lay out on a piece of paper what needs response and what needs potentially also reaction and what not, because whatever you've probably done in the past, that is exactly what brought us in the past to decide, this is not going to work. And whatever didn't work in the past, we no longer have to address. So I don't, basically at this point, I can just, using your analogy there, Claire, I just step away. I said, I would have probably immediately responded or reacted in my past because it was important, because I was still in this partnership. And I thought, I have to somehow voice or give myself a voice. But this is now over. This is no longer about past behavior that drove you up the wall, or it's called, not drove you up the wall. It's over. So how about, really laying out, it's just maybe we are creating together in this episode, I love this, just a new tool. It's kind of like, imagine there is a tray in front of you.
Yeah. And
are you taking with you? Right? What are you taking with you? What don't you want to take with you? And what do you feel might be money and children would potentially be something that needs to be negotiated. So if there's something that needs to be negotiated, that goes into the blue. And if there's something where you say, oh God, I will never ever want to talk about, I don't know, movie selection or dinner choices, anything, drop it, drop that rope, and then talk about these things. No, they're on the outside.
Yeah.
Because they're outside control. And if there's anything, this is just about you, where you say, you know what, and this is where I put in my boundary. And this gives you the agency to just say, you know what, this is something which is me in the future. And then to put it on the tray, and then basically just maybe just name it. It doesn't it look like a little bit like a dart, like a
dartboard,
a dartboard, yeah.
right? So
yeah. And this is, you know, and this blank circle is available for use. You know, you just need to Google the control circle. It'll come up. You can print it off. And, you know, part of the exercise that goes alongside it is exactly what Simone said. You know, make a list of the things that are concerning you or worrying you, or, you know, keep coming up for you. And then sort of put them into the different circles. And then pay attention to the emotional sort of cues that come up for you. And this is something that Claire touched on earlier. And it's, you know, treat it as a sign that you may need to try a different approach. So if something is coming up for you time and time again, and the same patterns are happening, there is nothing stopping you from trying a different approach or trying a different tactic, or, you know, because it may be something that is important to you. So it is a matter of, you know, something that you would like to be able to control. But don't think that, you know, just because you've tried one thing and you did not get the outcome, that there isn't something else that you could try. And this is where it's really sort of important to allow yourself, even with the things that you can control, to allow yourself a level of flexibility in being able to try different options to see what works for you and brings the best outcome for the situation that you're in. And the last aspect is, because I know we're coming up to time, is to take focused action. So taking focused action means to, you know, we only have a certain amount of hours, we only have a certain amount of energy, we only have, you know, like, so we need to identify where is that energy and time going to be best placed to bring us the best possible outcomes and not drain us.
But can I pick up on that and just give a practical example?
Absolutely.
So we talked earlier about our children going to our ex-partners for the weekend, say, and we talked about the bedtime, and we can influence by how we say, look, we would really like on a Sunday night if they go to bed at, you know, school night hours because they're going into the beginning of the week, but we can't control it. No. Coming up to that weekend, I would be suggesting and saying to parents, well, okay, so you're going to be on your own this weekend and you now have a choice. You can spend your time thinking about what is happening at the other home and getting upset about it and hoping and praying and all of this, or you can choose to turn around and go, what would I like to do with my time this weekend that would be a good use of my time? Is there anyone I would like to see? Is there a movie in the cinema that I'd like to see? Would I like to go for a walk on the beach or a swim? Would I like to go and meet someone for coffee? So when you turn your energy around to something different, you will then have had a weekend that hopefully will have given to you something that will enhance your world. So when your children come back, you have replenished and you have pulled back your emotions back into alignment. So then you can find out and see how they are. But you're a slightly better version of yourself than if you were the person who spent the whole weekend thinking about the other home and getting upset and worried and concerned. And that is one way practically that we can look at this circle of control and go, I can do this, but it's outside my control. So in this weekend that my children aren't with me, what could I choose to do and what would I like to do? And how am I going to make that happen? Who do I need to phone? What do I need to book? Yeah. And that focuses our energy in a different way, but we receive back things that are good for us, that will benefit us in whatever it looks like, connection or fun or rest or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think with that, we'll wrap up. I think it's hopefully that has given you lots of food for thought around looking at your, you know, what it is that's creating the overwhelm in your life at this current moment in time. And like I said, you know, this circle of control is available for free to print on the internet. It's in a PDF form, you know, download, have a play around with it, you know, really have a look at where you can sort of let go. And so therefore, the more you let go of the things that you don't have control over, the more energy you have to invest in the things that you do have control over.
Yeah.
So we hope that has been helpful to you. If you have any questions, please do post them at the bottom of the recording. Share with your friends and your family if you feel that anybody could benefit from this video, and like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next episode. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.